Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Midtown Scholar Bookstore's virtual event series. My name is Alex Brubaker. I'm the manager here at the Scholar. And as always, I am live in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania at the bookstore. Whether you're joining us on Crowdcast or Facebook Live or even YouTube Live, thanks so much for tuning in. Welcome to our live stream series where we host authors and speakers, and we keep the conversation going about books we love. Tonight, our featured book is The Siren of Mars, Searching for Life on Another World by Sarah Stewart Johnson. If you haven't yet purchased Sarah's book, I'd like to encourage you to do so. Purchasing her book through us helps support the author, this event series, and the future of the Midtown Scholar Bookstore. These copies are all first editions if you're into collecting, so click the green button below on Crowdcast to make your purchase. It's right below my face. There should be a green button. And if you're on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, just simply head to our website at midtownscholar.com to grab your copy. But now I'd like to introduce you to our speakers for this evening's program. Elizabeth Greenspan is a writer affiliated with the School of Design at the University of Pennsylvania. Her articles, essays, and criticism on cities, politics, and design have appeared in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The Boston Globe, The New Republic, and Places Journal, among others. She is the author of Battle for Ground Zero, which is about the politics of commerce and commemoration at the World Trade Center site, published in 2013. She holds a PhD in anthropology and urban studies from the University of Pennsylvania and is a senior fellow at Penn Praxis UPenn's School of Design's Applied Research Center. Of course, our author this evening is Sarah Stewart Johnson. She is an assistant professor of planetary science at Georgetown University, a former Rhodes Scholar and White House Fellow. She received her PhD from MIT and has worked on NASA's Spirit, Opportunity, and Curiosity rovers. She is also a visiting scientist with Planetary Environments Lab at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center. Now, last thing before I hand it off to Sarah and Elizabeth, please click the Ask a Question button below if you have a question for either author. I can't promise we'll get to all of them, but we'll save some time after the conversation to go over your questions. Again, the Ask a Question button is below the green button, below all of our faces here. But at this time, please join me in welcoming onto the screen Sarah and Elizabeth.
Great. Hello. Thanks so much, everyone, for coming and joining us. And Sarah and I are going to talk for a bit before we open it up to questions. But first, Sarah was going to read, I believe, just a short passage from the book to give us a taste of her story and her beautiful voice.
Oh, thank you, Liz. And just also, it's just such a tremendous honor to be here. Thank you to Alex and the Midtown Scholar. And it's so fun being here with Liz. Liz was in a sort of a writing group that helped me actually start and finish this whole project. So we've been friends for a long time. So there's nobody I'd rather share the screen with. But here, I thought I would just read this short passage from the prologue of the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so one might fairly wonder why we have pinned our hopes for finding life to this red planet. For the last couple of billion years, there's been no rain there. There are no rivers, no lakes, no oceans. Without the driving force of fluid erosion, scars left over millions of years by meteorites are strewn across the surface. Mars has no plate tectonics, no magnetic field, and little protective atmosphere. The terrain is quiet, exposed, and bewilderingly empty. Yet long ago, before it rusted over, Mars was much more like Earth, smaller, but similar in size and elemental composition. In its early days, Mars was black with igneous rock. Untold piles of lava built the planet's massive volcanic provinces, which bulged with enough basalt to flex the crust. The planet's swollen side cracked open as Mars cooled, with a fissure so deep that the Grand Canyon could disappear into a side channel. One of the largest mountains in the solar system was formed, towering over an escarpment that itself is nearly as tall as Everest. Those volcanoes lifted greenhouse gases into the air, wrapping the surface with a blanket of atmosphere. We know from the geologic record that the terrain was warm and wet, at least periodically. Around the time life may have been getting started here, conceivably in volcanic pools in Darwin's warm little ponds. Water was present on Mars, pregnant with possibility. In fact, there may have been enough water to fill a northern ocean, still and deep, with a seafloor as smooth and flat as the abyssal plains of the Great Pacific. Then, between 3.5 and 4 billion years ago, our planetary paths diverged and Mars was laid bare. Almost all of the atmosphere disappeared, so did the water. The planet slipped into a deep freeze, colder than the cold of Antarctica, leaving Mars the hyper-arid frozen desert we know today, bathed in high-energy solar and cosmic radiation. Now at dusk, the consistency of red flour coats the surface, wafted by dust devils into the impossibly thin air. Yet life, we have learned, is stunningly resilient. It can adapt, it can wedge into a crevasse, it can hang on against all odds, and it can reveal itself in unlikely ways. Traces of biology hide in the most unexpected locations. It's why I roam the terrain at the edge of the world, hunting for the subtlest fingerprints of life, learning how to look. In the far reaches of Australia, there's one particular lake that stands apart from the others, amid the rocks and the dunes, past the rabbit-proof fence in the Gibaldi Nature Reserve, past the derelict aerodrome. The surface is stippled with halite, a form of table salt that looks like freshly fallen snow. In the right place with a good grip, you can pull out a crystal of gypsum, severed like a shark's tooth from the jaw of the earth. The spear-tipped blades are as large as your hand. When you rinse away the red mud and hold it to the light, it flashes in the sun like a gemstone. Under a microscope, you can see the tiniest pockets within it, glinting drops of lake water sheathed in mineral hideaways, life caught in a crystalline dagger. These prismatic inclusions are just one of the many features we want to look for on Mars. We are seeking places where secrets are held, where traces of life might be preserved and protected. For over 50 years, we've been exploring Mars with telescopes, flyby missions, orbiters, landers, and rovers. We've scoured the surface for current life, as well as indications of past life, for possibilities and actualities. The wild strangeness of the planet with its tawny air and relentless red deserts calls to us. With each mission, we grapple to understand a world that's at once recognizable, yet at the same time
Whoops. I think we lost Sarah. Let me get everyone back on. It was just getting good. Sorry, everyone. We'll get Sarah back on soon. Hey, Liz.
Hey.
All right. Hey.
Hey. Okay.
I'm in the pandemic. You gotta be ready for it. All right. Okay. We're back on.
We're back. Okay. I think we were just at the very end of the passage, Sarah, right? Uh-oh, did we lose Sarah again?
I think we lost Sarah again. Oh no. All right. We'll get her back on. Sorry, everyone. Tech issues.
Are we back?
Yes. You keep going out, Sarah. I think something happens.
Sarah, can you hear us? I don't think she can hear us.
Mm.
Let me try one more time.
I wonder if her internet is...
Yeah, I don't know. There might be thunderstorms. While we try to get Sarah back on, Liz, hold on.
Oh.
Wait. Oh no. Yeah, let's try to. Let me see if I can possibly email her. Liz, so we're here for the Siren of Mars. You don't happen to have the book with you, do you?
I do, actually.
You do? Do you want to just read it?
Beautiful. It's very beautiful. I wanted to hold it up so everyone could see because it's just like a stunning cover, I think, with the colors and the surface. So they did a really, really lovely job. I mean, I could finish reading that part.
Yeah, why don't you just finish reading?
Okay.
I'll try to get Sarah back on here.
Let's see. So I'll start in just the final section. Okay. These prismatic inclusions are just one of the many features we want to look for on Mars. We are seeking places where secrets are held, where traces of life might be preserved and protected. For over 50 years, we've been exploring Mars with telescopes, flyby missions, orbiters, landers, and rovers. We've scoured the surface for current life, as well as indications of past life, for possibilities and actualities. The wild strangeness of the planet, with its tawny air and relentless red deserts, calls to us. With each mission, we grapple to understand a world that's once recognizable, yet at the same time indescribably foreign. We return again and again, and the mysteries deepen. Is Sarah back? Should I keep?
Can you hear Sarah?
I can, yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
It restarted, so hopefully that will.
Oh, okay. Hopefully that works. Yes. Okay. Great.
Okay. There were 3 more paragraphs.
Oh, I mean, we can just.
I just think they're actually 3 of my favorite paragraphs. So I would just want to read. There are a couple sentences that I think just capture, in a way, they're just a beautiful statement of the story that you wrote, and that this whole kind of project and your work and career, it just brings so much together. And so maybe I'll just read them. You say, in this way, the story of Mars is also a story about Earth, how we've sought another stirring of life in the universe, and what that search has come to mean. Mars has been our mirror, our foil, a telltale reflection of what has been deepest in our hearts. We have seen in Mars a utopia, a wilderness, a sanctuary, an oracle. I just think it's so rich and beautiful. And then you say, as a result, Mars has a human history inscribed upon its surface, even though no human has ever touched it. And I just think that that's so beautiful and brilliant. And that's the story that you then tell, about this human story that we have brought to this place that we've never visited. So it's amazing. And I hope maybe we can get back to that just general idea in the course of our conversation. Through your book, you weave your story and your family's story with the stories of so many of the scientists and researchers and astronomers that came before you, and enable you to be here. And I was hoping, before we get to all of those people, that you could first tell us about your personal journey, which is here, and how you knew you wanted to do this. I mean, this is such an amazing lifetime pursuit, and I wonder if there were any key moments in your education or in your early career when you knew not just that you would be a planetary scientist, but also that Mars was going to be, the focus of your inquiry.
Oh, that's such a great question, Liz. Yeah, well, I mean, there's one particular moment that I write about in the book, being on this volcano in Hawaii with a professor of mine, and just sort of seeing this little fern growing where no fern should have ever been growing, far beyond the tree line where there was just no trace of life whatsoever, and what a triumphant thing it was to sort of discover. But it wasn't just that moment that the idea of searching for life, or the idea of becoming a planetary science, really took hold. I mean, when I think about it in hindsight, there were so many moments that were really enabled primarily by the mentors that I had, people that had come before me that just took the time and that spent the energy to sort of teach, the next generation. Like, there was a professor that I met my very first year of college. I was a freshman. I was 18 years old. And this professor, Ray Arvidson at Washington University, took me on a trip to the Mojave Desert, which was most extraordinary thing. I barely even crossed the state line growing up, and all of a sudden I was in this desert full of stars, and the sky was incredible. And we were there testing Mars rovers, the prototypes for the Spirit and Opportunity rovers that would go on to Mars years later. And it was just amazing. And he also took me to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, sort of the epicenter of the robotic space exploration program for NASA. It's in a canyon north of Pasadena. And it was just an incredible adventure to be there with him. And then I had the sort of, once I went on and decided that I was going to pursue this field, I went to get a PhD in planetary science. And I had the tremendous pleasure of working with this woman, Maria Zuber. She was the first woman to ever lead a planetary mission for NASA. And she was just at the pinnacle of her career. And to sort of see someone like her and everything that she just pulled back the curtain for me on like what it could be to be a planetary scientist and a researcher. And I just think that like individuals like those two, they really made all the difference for me, because there's so many people in the world that are, that have talent, they're passionate, that are really willing to work hard, but they just don't get that kind of opportunity. And I just feel tremendously fortunate that, it wasn't just those two, but several others in my life that came and opened these doors for me.
Are you still in touch with either of them? Or
yeah.
Yeah.
I can't imagine not being in touch with either of them. And there's so many folks. I mean, the Mars community isn't really all that big. We all pretty much know each other. We go to these conferences and we get to see each other all the time. And it's been so fun, like, continuing to work on missions and planetary projects together. It's been really amazing.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the people that make up this Mars community now and then. We get many portraits. And there are teams, and leading from one to the other. And I know that you have a couple people that have kind of, in the course of your research, stood out to you. And I was wondering if you could share, one or two stories of some of those individuals to give us a taste of the people that populate this book.
Yeah, I guess I'm a big believer in the power of storytelling. And so there are stories kind of woven throughout this book, kind of historical figures as well as, modern day scientists, and kind of the lengths that they would go to explore Mars. I mean, there's so many, Liz. And I mean, as you know, there are a lot of people that didn't even make it into the book that I got to do research and just didn't quite make the final, couldn't quite put everybody in there that I wanted to. Okay, I have to pick one or two. So there's one that I've been thinking about a lot, I guess, in our current moment. There was a man named William Pickering, and right on the eve of World War I, he started writing these weather reports from Mars, and they were so poignant and evocative, and he would just spend night after night beneath this telescope, and he would depict what he imagined or what he understood to be like the greening of the southern Mare, and these high-rising cumulus clouds sweeping the sky, and these gargantuan floods coming in. And it was this wilderness, this place that really was just free of suffering and injustice, and as all these atrocities were amassing. And he was writing these weather reports, and there's something very poignant about that, I think sort of in our current moment. And I don't think that, we can escape to Mars and it can be a place that we can, escape our current troubles. We have so much sort of going on. And when I think about some of these missions, there are a bunch of missions that are about to launch later this month. And the American one, sometimes it feels like it's going to just kind of catapult out of our riven soul up to Mars, with so much suffering and so much pain here in our country at the moment. But I do kind of understand the sentiments. So he's been one. And I guess go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's just fascinating that something as sort of every day as a weather report, that would capture a sort of narrative of this place. I mean, it makes sense, but yeah, the power of just something that simple. That's cool. Oh no, did we lose Sarah again?
No, it looks like we lost her. Oh man.
Oh no.
All right. I'll try to get her back on. Liz, well, while we're here, what are you reading these days? Obviously, the Siren of Mars. I always love to hear what everyone's reading during the quarantine. Whether you're reading,
well, I just actually have this book behind me. It's a new book. It's called My Brilliant Darkness. I don't know if others have heard of it, by Jeff Shartland. And I went to a reading. It must have been just weeks before, COVID kind of shut everything down, because I think it was one of the last meetings that I attended in person. And I'm here in Philly, and he came through Philadelphia. And it's interesting because he's a journalist, and he's written a lot. And he has a whole Instagram series that some of you people may be familiar with, where he meets people and he takes their picture, and he kind of created this storytelling mode where he would write a short story to go with their Instagram photo. And he was kind of playing with like the new kinds of storytelling that our different media allows us to work with. And then certain individuals, though, over the course of his travels and journey, kind of took hold of, I guess, he formed relationships with people. And so some of these then developed into longer essays about kind of these sort of happenstance meetings that then like launch into something bigger. But it's very contemporary, and it feels like it's kind of speaking to this moment right now where there's a lot of strife, but a lot of desire for connection, I would say. So Anyway, we were talking about the other books we were reading in addition to
Oh no.
Oh no.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what the issue is.
Yeah,
Liz, do you just quickly just talk about just your favorite part of the Siren of Mars?
Yeah, I guess Sarah.
I'm gonna call Sarah, so feel free.
Okay. Yeah, I can say that. Sarah, and maybe some of you who are watching know her. She's a brilliant scientist. She's also just a beautiful writer. Her prose are stunning. And I did, as Sarah mentioned up front, we had the privilege of being together in a writing group as we were both working on projects, and I read drafts of chapters of the book as she was developing them. And, we would think through questions of structure and the threads that were tying different people's stories together. And and I'm not a scientist at all. Social science and humanities is my area. So just seeing Mars written about in this way, in a way that's so narrative and has such rich detail, and that creates, Sarah creates kind of a really rich visual world when she writes. And so to have that, and there's a romance, I would say, almost here, there's just, and to feel that through Sarah's writing alongside the science, to me, that was just sort of like, something I had never encountered before, even in like the rough draft chapters that I was getting furthest on. And so now seeing this in the book, that it just, it links like the whole story together. But I would say Sarah's voice is my favorite part, and I think it's unique in science writing, and so. Yeah.
Sarah, whenever you go away, we're just heaping praise on you.
Yeah, we are.
But don't worry, we've got the program under control.
Yeah. I'm trying to download.
Yes, it looks like you have the correct crowdcast. I think she's going to download it to her app.
Okay.
So
let's see what I can. So, I know that, and I also learned some about Sarah's own research, which is like the other cool thing is that, she has put together this story while she's running her own lab, at Georgetown. And so, and she's one of, and I think she talks about this at the very end, but she's studying these traces. Like, one of the things that the book talks about, and that hopefully Sarah and I can talk about a little bit more as we go on, is that the search for life on Mars has it's shifted over time, so that the expectations for what we might find have really evolved, and I guess in the one sense gotten smaller, because, you know, I think very early on there was a thought of like, could there be alien life, you know, like, and then it was, is there vegetation and life sustained by water? And then when there was no water to be found, it was about, you know, microorganisms, and now it's about traces, which is where Sarah's research lies. And so that was sort of fascinating, that each kind of roadblock didn't abandon the search, but it redefined what we would be looking for and what might be possible. And I don't know where that leaves us right today. And I'm hoping Sarah can also come talk about that here. But yeah, I wonder if there are, and if anyone is listening and has questions, let's see. There's already one question about SpaceX. Yes, I was wondering how long it would take us to get to SpaceX. And that's the other, you know, the other piece too, is like, I have read some science fiction, and the idea of colonizing Mars, I think, is really cool, and I'm curious what Sarah thinks about that, and if that's in her mind a possibility for us, or if that's just another one of our kind of human fantasies that we're applying to this place, but that isn't really of this place, you know. Let's see, have we had any luck reaching Sarah?
So no luck yet, but she's downloading the app on her phone, and we're gonna try to go through.
Okay. So yeah, as you're thinking, you know, I will be, when Sarah gets back, she and I will talk for a few more minutes, and then I can look at, and I'll look over your questions, and I can ask her, especially for those of you who are watching who are scientists yourselves, if there's certain things you'd like to know.
Yeah, definitely. If you're in the audience right now, get your questions ready. Maybe we can have an extended Q&A when we get Sarah back on here. So get your questions in, and we'll get to it. You know, there's a certain genre that, so I will admit to not having read the book yet. And this is,
I'm sure you have many books on your.
Yeah, there's many books to read, and there's some delays with distribution right now. But I'm very excited to read this one, and I think, you know, one of my favorite genres right now, if we call it a genre, is kind of, you know, the history or the science of something, but adding in your own narrative.
I mean,
like, you know, part memoir, part history, part obviously science. And so I love that it's kind of this mingling of genres. Really
and I think it brings it, for those of us who, you know, I don't know if I would necessarily pick up a book about Mars just on my own if I was passing through the bookstore, but Sarah, she's a good reminder not to necessarily follow those instincts, because especially books like this that weave personal stories, I love that too.
Yeah.
And you can see yourself in, you know, it makes it a little bit, it allows me at least to connect to her research a little bit more.
Let me get back on the phone with Sarah. Do you want to, but in the meantime, are you writing anything these days? Are you?
Sure. I mean, I can talk about that. I do. I mean, it's funny thinking about the colonization question, because the piece perhaps where Sarah and my work overlaps is in thinking about cities and architecture, and if Mars is a place where humans can someday live. I have been part of conversations about what that might look like, and there is a community of people talking about the architecture and the design of other planets, and trying not to do the kinds of things we've done here that haven't worked out so well, to learn from our mistakes. And And so I've talked to Sarah about that too, with like our, I want to know what she thinks about about all the science fiction cities that have like lived, been on Mars. We're staying out.
I'm blaming Crowdcast for this one. So
it's something weird where it'll stop and then start looping on the video of the past.
Yeah. Okay, but you're back.
Computer, maybe.
Yay! Okay, so we have talked about a couple things. I did want to ask you because I also see a couple people. Some people have started putting questions in, and so we'll talk, but then I'll also throw in a question from people who've been watching for a few minutes too. Some people have been asking about colonization, and just because I think that that's on people's minds, when they hear about Mars in the news these days, or when they read books or go to the movies, that's kind of like the popular vision of Mars, that it's a place for human colonization. And I wonder if, and just what you make of that, and how you would fit that into the story that you crafted here, and if you think that that's, I'll just leave it open-ended and maybe we can go from there.
Liz, it's a great question, and a great question for whoever was asking it online. It is something, of course, what will precede colonization is just human exploration, which is a big leap forward. But I don't think it's nearly as large a leap as, we had this point in like 1957 where we didn't, before Sputnik, and we had nothing, and we went in 12 years from nothing to people on the moon. And when I think about the technological leap, of course there are tremendous challenges, very punishing radiation environment, a lot of I'm sorry, I think I've interference. Okay, a lot of just real challenges about sort of mental health and physiological.
Oh no! All right.
Oh, no.
I think we're gonna try it one more time, and if that doesn't work, then we can work on maybe coordinating an interview, maybe separately, that we can then upload to all our applications. I'm sorry, our program is being derailed by tech issues. So we'll try one more.
We can try, and let's see if there's anything. It's too bad, but I also think that in some ways the stories themselves deserve to be read. And so I know I was talking with Sarah. She had told me about Pickering as, one of the scientists who really stood out to her today, but there were others. And one of the things that I also wanted to talk to Sarah about a little bit was just that, not many of the characters that we learn about are men, because men were ones who were able to be scientists for so long, and that does change over time. And Sarah did have some mentors who I think were really important to her, who were amazing scientists. And I wanted to read, and so I found one here about an MIT professor named Maria Zuber. And so I thought maybe just while we're waiting to see if Sarah can come back, I'll just read a bit about her, because I think, and Sarah, and it's a little bit more of a memoir style too in this part. And so this is chapter 7. It's called Periapsis. I was a sophomore in college, one of thousands attending a crowded scientific conference, when I first saw the kaleidoscope new map of Mars made from data collected by the Mars Global Surveyor mission. I'd taken a seat alongside some other undergraduates in the packed ballroom as an MIT professor named Maria Zuber walked to the front of the room. She seemed impossibly small standing behind the podium. Then her slides blazed to life and she began to speak. I remember feeling a little distracted at the beginning of her talk as her voice filled the cavernous hall, and I puzzled over it for a few minutes. Then my back straightened as it became clear what I was responding to. It was the first time I'd ever heard a woman give a planetary science talk. Yay! I'm reading about Maria Zuber. Is that how you Yeah. In chapter 7, because I was thinking about was the fact that it's the first time you'd ever heard a woman give a planetary science talk. That's just amazing. But also how lucky you were to even have that, right? I mean, and so that's a whole nother kind of realm. But maybe we can finish talking about colonization, and then we can get to some of the other questions as well.
Oh, you guys, I'm so sorry. I think the Crowdcast app just hates me. So we were talking about colonization. I think I left off just saying that I think that the technological leap, even though it's a big one, is not as big as the former one that we took from nothing to the moon. And I think it will happen. Like, I do think that we will have human exploration of Mars potentially soon, within the next decade or 2 or 3.
Wow, really?
I think it's possible. I think that the stage is set for rapid progress if we decide we want to do it. But as a scientist, as an astrobiologist, there's part of me that feels like I'm very focused on this window that we have before humans arrive. Not to say that the search for life and human exploration can't proceed hand in hand, but we have a pristine planet and these incredibly capable robotic explorers. And I think there's part of me that just really wants to make the very most of this opportunity, to sort of, to look, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of this world. And so much of our own planet's biomass is underneath the surface in microbial form, just very simple life. And I think that, if we could just access some of those places, there was a hidden subglacial lake that was just discovered just 2 years ago on the surface, underneath the surface of Mars, under the South Polar layer deposits. And there's so many places that I'd love to explore sort of before we arrive, as bags of biology, sniffing off cells left and right.
So you would explore that. So you would explore that by sending web machines, collecting materials and bringing them back. Is that what you mean when you say, or is there a way for humans to go but not disrupt the surface?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So we are actually about to embark on this breathtakingly ambitious campaign to bring carefully chosen samples of Mars back to Earth. So as early as July 30th, there's a launch window that opens. We have these every 26 months as the planets swing together on the same side of the sun. But the Perseverance rover is going to, lift up into the sky from Cape Canaveral. It's going to go to Mars, and it's going to kick off a 3-mission series. The idea is to use that rover to cache samples, of astrobiological relevance, as well as other very high priority science samples, leave them on the surface. A fetch rover will come along and put them into an ascent vehicle, and then another mission will come by and collect them and bring them back to Earth.
Wow.
And I think that's going to be a real paradigm shift in sort of how we think about the search for life, looking for traces. We won't just be focused on data coming back remotely. We'll have these samples and we can just kind of hit them with everything we've got in terms of our laboratory capabilities. So I think that'll be really exciting. But I think there are tremendous opportunities as well for what we can continue to do with in situ science and in situ exploration, just kind of with the capabilities we have at Mars. We have so much access to the planet compared to other worlds further out in the solar system. We can go every 2 years. We can send these massive payloads. We've done the hard work of getting to know the place. There's so much scientific potential I see there.
Is there anything that you sort of most want to find or discover, like that you're, I'm sure there's so many things, but what is if you could make it happen, what would be the thing?
Well, certainly it would be evidence of life, and there are different types of life. And so I should say that even the discovery of life that was very similar to life here on Earth, like even if it was ancestrally related, even if we just kind of caught life from the next planet over, it would be a chance to replay the tape of evolution, to sort of run that great experiment over again. But I think the thing that I get most excited about is this idea of an independent genesis, a type of life that's so different from anything we've ever seen before. And I just think when I think of biology, it seems in many ways like a descriptive science, largely because we're constrained. We have one data point. All the life that we know about is the same kind of life. It's all this DNA-based single origin. We're all the same. All the life on Earth is the exact same stuff, essentially. And if we could have another data point, I just think it would tell us so much about the nature of biology, the fundamental, is biology just a consequence of energetic systems? Are there pathways that it would follow, or could it just result in something completely beyond the confines of our current thinking? It's just, that's the stuff that I get most excited about.
Yeah. Well, so one of the questions here is how did you choose the title of your book? And you were I feel like there was a siren quality that you were evoking there. But yeah, I'm curious, when by the time we started reading each other's work, you had already chosen the title. And so I never knew that story.
Yes, there was a title. I have to say, I kind of always thought I would come back and maybe revisit the title. I sort of had this placeholder title for a long time. And then I guess with a lot of things with writing,
right.
not coming back and doing. I think that's one of the hardest things about writing a book. Something that I totally did not appreciate when I went into this is that there's this feeling sometimes that it's never finished. I still look at all these passages and I think, oh, I wish I'd done this or done that. And I think maybe the title, I do like the idea of the title, and there is something about this draw, this kind of yearning, this longing that pulls you in, the sort of, romance of this planet, this other world that's so similar to us, but so indescribably foreign, and you just, you can't pull away quite entirely. And I do think there's something very beautiful about it. It's kind of like this siren song to me, but but I think I don't know, it was one of the things that I just thought, well, maybe there's something slightly different. So there might be some version of that, I could tweak it or something, but it's the title.
No, but I think it does capture it's one of the threads that kind of links all the individuals that you write about, and also yourself, that there is something, right? And it's probably many things, but that it compels people to sort of obsess in a way, right, about this place that's so far away. Something else people are asking is if you want to go to Mars, if that's even I don't know how much in the realm of possibility that really is, but if that's something you've thought about, would you do that?
That's a great question too. And my 20-year-old self might be a little disappointed in my answer, but when I was a lot younger, I really thought it'd be great to become an astronaut, or to sort of actually go and be an explorer. And I think something that I've realized too is that there's so many ways to explore our universe, and you don't necessarily have to go yourself. And I think at this point in my life, this particular moment, I've got these two little kids that I just can't imagine being away for that long. With our current propulsion technologies, the sort of 3-2-1 blast off chemical propulsion sort of idea, you go and you come back, but it's a long journey. It's a couple of years, and you just don't get those years back. And so at least at this point, I just can't imagine. It's hard enough for me to just go to Antarctica.
Right.
It's just here on our planet. So
it's basically like Mars. Yeah. Right. Okay, here's a question I think from somebody who knows their science. He writes, what do you think of the various ground-based and spacecraft detections of trace amounts of methane in the Martian atmosphere? But ESA's orbiter has not detected methane. Do you think the detections are real? And if so, what are the chances that the methane has a biogenic origin?
Yeah, and so just as background for folks that maybe don't know the methane story, it's a real saga. So methane is a really exciting gas in many ways, because 90% of it is produced by biology here on Earth, and it's a gas that doesn't have a very long lifetime, and so like seeing like big accumulations of it on Mars is really intriguing. Like even actually detectable accumulations of methane, like it either means one, that there's some geologic process where Mars is much more active than we initially imagined it to be, or there's some process, maybe deep geologic processes in the subsurface that's creating that methane, or two, that maybe it could be a trace, a trace gas that's coming off of some, say, subsurface biological activity. And we've gone back and forth so many times. Like originally there were these detections, both from telescopic observations, like here on the surface of Mars back in 2003. And then there was an orbiter, Mars Express, that was looking. And so we saw this kind of plume of methane, but then it disappeared. And then we landed on the surface and we didn't see it again. It's like, well, why would it be there? And then it would disappear. And then with the Curiosity rover, with the SAM instrument, Sample Analysis at Mars, which is this big kind of microwave type instrument in the belly of the rover, which I've been really lucky to get to participate on as part of the science team, we've found methane again. We've seen it on the surface, and we've seen this seasonal cycle even, where it's, it rises at certain times of the year and then drops. And it's really, really, really intriguing. But we have this trace gas orbiter from the Europeans in orbit, and so like trying to sync up these measurements. One of the things that the teams for both of those missions have been trying to do is to try to take measurements at the same time and try to reconcile, like, why do we see it on the surface but not from orbit? What's happening here? And it's been sort of an ongoing saga. I think something may have to do with the actual timing of the measurements that we're taking, and like sort of what's happening even just diurnally as things build up and go away during the day. And I think that may help reconcile some of the issues. We're also in a crater, so Gale Crater, where Curiosity has landed, is like a big depression, and we're climbing up this mountain that is called Mount Sharp in the center of the crater. It rises higher than Rainier above Seattle, but we still have potentially some accumulation in these more low-lying areas that could help explain it. But anyway, it's a big mystery, and it's something that is, of great interest to all the astrobiologists that are looking at Mars, trying to figure out, like, could this actually be a trace of, microbial metabolism?
Okay, so the jury is still out. So it's really like an open question.
Yeah, and I'd say it's one of the biggest questions about kind of what's happening, at least at the global level on Mars, in terms of potential biosignatures.
Okay. Wow. Cool. Well, so let's talk, I'm kind of, the whole gender politics of all of this is like, I have mixed feelings about, because it's something that women writers and that we tend to talk about more than men, but it is nonetheless a real thing, and one of there's a question about it as well, and I wonder just what you think, I guess, having gone through this world, if, how you would explain the lack of women, relatively speaking, I guess, if you see that changing, is it a generational question? Is it more than that? And I guess I would be curious too to hear from you, as you charted this path, and you talk about in the book about seeing the first woman give, or the first time you heard a woman giving a speech, how important that was for you. And I'll just kind of leave those questions to you.
That's a great question too, Liz, and forever ask it online. I do think, this field, astronomy, planetary science has been largely dominated by men for many years, but things are changing. And I do think it really makes a huge difference. The fact that I got to do a PhD supervised by a female advisor, it really made all the difference for me in a lot of ways. Like when I'd sort of doubt myself, or I'd look around and there weren't as many women in my classes, or like people would say things that were a little cheeky, I could look up at Maria and just see her, just I don't know, just crushing it. And it was really amazing to be able to watch that. And she was the first head of a science department at MIT ever. And there was a point during my graduate school during that duration where she became our department chair, and she started really heavily recruiting other female faculty members. And so we went from a department with 3 out of, I don't know, 60, 70 faculty members to 8, just in a matter of a year or two. And that also made this tremendous difference to sort of see these people kind of at different stages of their career, kind of mid-career and really advanced people. And it sort of laid out this really nice path, at least for me, to kind of see and be able to envision myself kind of following in their footsteps. And I do think things are changing. Even my lab right now, I think we've got like 12 women in my lab, and that wasn't on purpose. I just work with the best students that I can find. But it's really amazing that just for whatever reason, all of those people happen to be women now, and we go to these meetings and they're much more balanced than they used to be, at least when I was an undergraduate. I think we're still really struggling though to sort of, bring in folks, African American, Hispanic, other minorities. Like I think there just are very, very few people in the field, and I think it's something we really, really need to really focus on as a field.
Do you think? There are a lot of, there's stereotypes or they feel like stereotypes that are sort of older and out of place, but they continue to crop up, that science and, I would say the whole STEM sort of, kind of category of thinking, just like that women aren't as interested in it, or that it, and it sounds like you're seeing that in your own experience, just in like your own lab, that's just not true. And that doesn't account for the discrepancy. How would you respond to a question like that? It constantly is part of the kind of conversation, it seems.
Yeah, well, so much of that is just coded from society, like so early. Like I've got a little girl and a little boy, and I can just tell you like the sort of messages that, my daughter in preschool has like been receiving. It's really disturbing. And she already has these very defined ideas about, sort of who does what in the world based on gender, which I just do everything I can possibly do to disrupt. I feel like that is a mission in life lately. But it's, and you just see it, like if you can have those opinions when you're like 3 years old or 4 years old, like just how prevalent all of these things must be. And I just think that, like there's almost like not even a chance for some people to discover how exciting it is to like tinker with science, because they get these ideas that this isn't like them, like this isn't a way for them to go forward. And it worries me a lot, because, we need all the human talent we can to like be brought into this enterprise, to be asking these incredible questions. And I think that one piece of amazing advice that I got at one point was, like you really have to choose your collaborators. And if you pick people that, and I've been so fortunate, because I've benefited tremendously from incredibly supportive men as well as women, like, throughout my career. But I think that I've really been able to surround myself with colleagues and collaborators that I just love working with, that, are so supportive, where, I just feel like those things don't seep in as much. And there are maybe some people that like I would rather not work with again, because things were more tricky, and so it's just I don't know, but I really do feel like it's one of those things that I'd really like to help change. And mentoring is a big part of that, and sort of helping there be more role models, not just for women, but also folks from all different walks of life.
Yeah, and writing and sharing. So I think I'll ask one last question. So we're kind of hitting the time, even though we had some disruptions. But I thought that your answer to the methane question is really fascinating, and I wonder if there's, for those of us who are maybe new to thinking and learning about Mars science, is there anything else that we should be watching for, like a discovery or a question that's going to kind of be coming up as like one of the big defining questions in this next stretch of time, as we're watching the news, or things that we should keep our eyes peeled for that will mean something big,
Yeah. I don't know. That's a great question. And it's hard to pick just one, because I feel like there have been more resources and energy marshaled toward Mars now than ever before. And it's not just the United States and NASA sending missions, it's the Chinese are about to launch a mission, the United Arab Emirates are. And one of the ones that, I'm so excited about the idea of sample return, but that may take a while to get those samples back. One thing I'm also really excited about is a European mission that's going to launch in 2 years. It's a collaboration between the Russians and the Europeans, but the Europeans have a rover that's going to be landed on the surface called Rosalind. And it was supposed to actually launch with the same launch opportunity in 2020 that we have about to open this 3-week window. But it had to get pushed back by 2 years because of some technical difficulties, like Crowdcast. So anyway, so this mission, one of the big things that I've been thinking a lot about and my group has been working on is there's a really powerful instrument that's going to be on this mission, and they're going to get to drill down into the subsurface 2 meters, which is going to get below a lot of the radiation that you get from cosmic rays bombarding the surface. And so you're going to get molecules that are likely much more complex, molecules that have stayed together, that haven't been sort of blasted apart. And this instrument, it's called the MOMA instrument, the Mars Organic Molecule Analyzer. And I think that there could be some really exciting discoveries there. This is a really powerful instrument. It's going to basically heat up a sample and look, for the evolved gases, and then also look for using these wet chemistry experiments to try to find even more complex molecules. And I just think that could be really tremendously exciting. Like if we were to find, say very complex molecules that could be potentially of biological origin, and perhaps not even Earth-like life, maybe even life kind of as we don't know it, life that might have a different sort of biochemistry. We might still be able to see traces of that chemical complexity. So that's one. That's one you can watch for, though maybe 2 years away.
Yeah,
and then of course when we get these samples back, it'll be really exciting to kind of hit them with everything we've got.
Great. Well, thank you so much. This has been so excellent. And I've learned so much, as I always do, talking with you. So everyone, buy the book. It's right here.
Green button down below.
Green button.
I just want to wrap us up. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Liz. Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry to our viewers for the tech issues. Blame me for not. I don't know. We'll try to investigate and research Crowdcast and some of the troubleshooting techniques that we have to go through. But thank you for sticking with us. Our view rate through all of that didn't change at all. So people really.
Thank you.
It was worth it. So if you'd like to purchase Sarah's book, again, it's the green button below. If you're on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, just head to our website, midtownscholar.com. Thank you again to our viewers. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Liz. I want to give you both the last word to our audience. So we'll go Liz, then Sarah. Last word to our audience.
Oh, well, thank you for coming. And thank you for sticking with us. And thank you for your questions, which I tried to pass on. And I hope everyone has a lovely evening.
And I'll just follow that by saying thank you as well. Thank you, Alex, for this opportunity to talk about the book on this publication day. It's an exciting event to be here. And Liz, my longtime friend, without whom I never would have actually probably joined. It's an exciting time, this.
And I think we're losing. I think we just lost her again. So that ends the event. Thank you again, everyone. Thank you, Liz, for hanging in there. All right.
All right.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.